This is Ben McDonald. We're out here in southwest Mississippi, and it's the fall time of the year like everybody else. We're putting food plots in the ground. Been very dry, as you know. We had record rainfall in August, but September and October, we've got hardly nothing. So we're hoping for rain when we get these food plots in the ground. Pretty good chance a couple of days from now. But I'll take you through our process and what we do. So starting about mid-August, we'll start turning over our food plots. And it's a process where we'll turn them over once and kind of kill the grass on top. Then we'll turn them over a second time about 2 weeks later once that grass is dead. And then we'll hit them one more time to make sure they're nice and smooth like you see these food plots are right here. And then what we'll do then, we'll come in. I'll do it a little bit differently, and I put all my big seed out first. So, I mean, if you look in the ground, we just threw some big seed out right here. So what I use is, there's your oat right there. There's an oat. There's a little wheat right there. I got rye out here too. That's kind of my favorite combination of oats, wheat, and rye is what I do. Of course, your forage oat and your forage wheat are really good. Produces a lot of forage for you. And the rye is a very hardy cereal grain. It'll go down into the ground a good bit. It's got a longer taproot. It'll go down and find that moisture, which is what we need this time of the year. All of them are good sources of protein. This wheat right here is a lawless wheat, which means it doesn't have a spur on the end of it when it comes to a head. Turkeys really prefer this, and so do deer. It doesn't, when it matures, it doesn't get real high, so the turkey can still come out here and feed, because a turkey won't come into a field. If it's very high, he won't come into that field, but if it's lower when it matures, he will. And so we'll throw all this stuff out. All our big seed goes out with our fertilizer, and then we'll take a harrow and we'll cover everything up like everybody does. Now, what I like to do, which is a little bit different what some folks do, I'll take all my small seed after that, which is all my turnips, my rape, what we call brassica plants, those big leafy plants. I'll put a layer of that out along with some clover and chicory on top of that. And then we'll take a big roller and we will just mash that to the ground and create contact with seed to soil contact. That's all I do. I put it on top. I know a lot of people throw it out all at once, but my fear is if you cover that small seed up and you get it too deep in the ground, it doesn't have the push power to get through the top. So I'll layer on top of my big seed once we cover it up, come on the top with small seed, and then we'll just mash it to the ground is what we do. And here in southwest Mississippi, I've not had great luck with summer food plots and spring food plots. Weed competition can be a big time problem. So what we do is I put this layer of clover and chicory down, and that's what sustains my deer come March, April, May, June. It's a great protein source, and it's popping out of the ground. And so your deer are putting on antlers. And of course, your does need it for their fawns and their lactation and all that kind of stuff. So it's a good source of protein when your clover and chicory comes out of the ground. Now, I'll tell you a trick that I use, and if you have the resources to do it, I would advise you do it. Do you some soil samples. You can go to the county extension office right here where we're at in Woodville, Mississippi. They give you a little carton, and you walk around your food plots, and you take a little bit in that carton, and you send it off, and they will come back and tell you what your soil is as far as the pH balance of your soil and what kind of fertilizer you need to put out. I do that about every third or fourth year. I will check my soil. I just put 2 tons of lime out per acre last year because my acidity levels in my soil was getting a little bit high, and so I wanted to bring it back down to maximize. I mean, as expensive as diesel is, fertilizer and seed is right now, you want to make sure you're maximizing your growth, and that's one way I do it. I stay on top of my soil with my pH balance to make sure I'm getting the best growth that I can get. And you know, we're growing some really good deer, and I really think the food, of course, along with the management, I know a lot of people are managing now, but I really think the food source, and not just the food source during hunting season. Remember, our biggest stress time for our deer are going to be during the spring and the summer. That's when they need some growth, when they're putting on horns and all that kind of stuff. So that's when I pump the protein to them with clover and chicory. During the spring and the summer, we talked about the chicory and the clover coming out of the ground. Deer prefer clover that is tender, doesn't have a long stem on it. That's when they eat it the most, and they do prefer it when it's like that. Clover, if it's not eaten, will get a long stem to it, and it'll get really long with a clover head to the top of it. And it gets something in the stem called lictin is what it is. It's very bitter tasting stem to it. So what we'll do when the food plots really get going in the spring, say March and April, and the clover gets high, we'll take a bush hog and we will bush hog strips in it. Now, in other words, we won't come in here and bush hog this whole food plot. I may cut 1 strip on this side, 1 strip on this side. That allows where you cut to start coming up producing fresh clover. if they are eating the long stuff, it does give them something in the meantime. And then once that, what we bush hog comes up, then we'll go ahead and bush hog the rest of it down and give it a chance to come up. So I do manage my clover. Now, if you got a high deer density situation, a lot of times you don't have to go in and bush hog your clover down because the deer obviously keep it eaten down. But that's the one thing that I've done about clover over the years. And we've been doing this process, I don't know, probably about 16 years now. I've been putting clover and chicory out. I love chicory for two reasons. Chicory has a long taproot to it. I mean, you can pull it out of the ground, it goes down. And of course, we know here in Southwest Mississippi and Louisiana, we don't get the rain sometimes, but that chicory will find that water and that moisture down in the soil, and so it'll come up good. Another thing about chicory, and I didn't know this many years ago, it's got a natural wormer in it. So when deer are eating, believe it or not, we want to worm our deer. I mean, there's a chance worms getting in these deer. If you grow in chicory too, there's a chance that you can help worm your deer just through chicory. So I like that part of it too as a management side. You know, it's dry right now, and there's not much moisture in the soil at all, but that's not a bad thing, and I'm gonna tell you why. If there is moisture in the ground and your food and your seeds germinate and they pop out of the ground, if you don't get moisture on top of that, what happens, I've seen happen, is your growth, your oats and your wheat will stall about that tall up. And if you got a high deer density situation, they'll just come in and pick everything up. You won't rain right after they germinate where it keeps pushing up. But if you're planting on dry seed beds like I'm planting right now, like there's no chance this stuff is going to germinate right now. But that's not a bad thing, because your big seed can sit in the ground probably about 3 weeks. 3 weeks it can sit there, it's not going to hurt anything at all, and if you get moisture within that 3 weeks, you're fine, you're not going to lose any seed at all. So I'm kind of gambling in some ways because it's getting late, it's mid-October right now, but pretty good chance of rain coming up on Tuesday, a little bit more over the weekend. So I'm gambling some ways that within the next 2 or 3 weeks, I'm going to get some good rainfall to get these food plots kicking. So I've been coming up here hunting Southwest Mississippi, I don't know, for about 30 years now. And the weather's changed over the years. We used to plant about mid-September years ago. It seemed like we always hit it right then. It seemed like the moisture was pretty good. We didn't have to fight army worms. I know a lot of you guys out there that plant early, I hear the stories of people getting, and I've had army worms on this place in the springtime too, which that's a whole different subject. But I have had to push back over the years. So I've pushed back now about a month from when I used to plant 30 years ago, just because of moisture more than anything. And so it seems like the later you wait to plant, the better chance you get of getting consistent moisture. When you're relying on rain, it is tough, but that's kind of what's different. And the other thing's different for me is my soil samples. When I first started doing this, I didn't know anything about soil, in particular fertilizers. It's strange on this place, like I've done soil samples, you know, it's 900 acres, but it's weird, on certain sides of the property, it may call for an 8-24-24 fertilizer, but in the center part of the property, it may call for no fertilizer at all and just ammonium nitrate. And then on my west end over there, for whatever reason, where the hills are, it calls for 0060 fertilizer, which is basically a potash is what it is. And so don't think one size fits all on your fertilizer. If you got a bigger place, I'm telling you, it don't cost hardly anything to do your soil samples, send it off, let them send it off, and they will bring it back and tell you exactly what kind of fertilizer you need, how much per acre, and that way you're going to maximize the growth that you get out of your food plots. But don't think it's all the same fertilizer across the board, because it's not.